Hello, BookTube. I've seen recently a few other booktubers take the challenge, not the criminally satanic challenge of reading 100 books you own before you buy a single new book. This is a challenge that criminally has put around, uh, that a number of booktubers are taking them up on, probably because they're looking around their shelves and seeing that they could use such a reduction in excess weight. I have not, of course, myself. Uh, But in reaction to that tag, Michael K. Vaughan is one of the booktubers who is taking that challenge to read 100 books they already own, as opposed to going out and just mindlessly buying new books as God intended. He is taking that challenge, and one of the ways that he came up with to do that was to go spelunking down into the bowels of his Kindle and see what was there that he'd just been ignoring for months or years even. And he did that. He showed a bunch of titles. I did the same thing, but I weaponized it into a tag that I want you all to do. Take me down into the bowels of your Kindle or your favorite reading app. For me, it's not my Kindle. I recognize the value of Kindles. I recognize how much people love them. Good God, when I was contemplating getting a brand new Kindle, I had emails from people the like of which Amazon would gladden their evil heart to read the emails that I got from hundreds of people saying not only was this a great purchase, it was the greatest purchase of any object that I have ever made. It has been a game changer. I lost count of how many times I heard that phrase over and over again from people on different continents. A game changer as far as the reading goes. And I understand that because the Kindle is very convenient. It's very lightweight. It virtually never needs charging. The Kindle Oasis is a little bit more power hungry than the Kindle Paperwhite, but the Kindle Paperwhite virtually never needs charging, and it's conducive to concentration. In the 21st century, things that are conducive to concentration are extremely rare. I think we can all agree on that, no matter whether or not we think that's a bane. There's pretty much only one thing that you can do on your Kindle. You can read on your Kindle, and that's it. And I have lost count of how many people over the years have emailed me and said, I just funnel in to reading books. When I open my Kindle, I don't have the desire to check my phone or doom scroll on my iPad or anything like that. That desire itself goes away. Fantastic. Any technology that will do that is fantastic. And people have also told me over and over again the raw material benefit. You know, I read 67 books last year, and this year I read 167, and it's because of my Kindle. Okay, fine. I am, I guess, less distractible, and when I fall into a book, I don't care if there's Twitter one app away. I don't care at all. And the blue light, the backlighting of an iPad doesn't bother my eyes the way it bothers so many of you. So my preferred method is to read on my iPad or on a tablet of some kind. I also have a beautiful Samsung tablet that has recently become a little fractious, little moody and arms crossed when it comes to ebooks, which is a huge chunk of what I use a tablet for. So if a tablet is going to give me problems with ebooks, I'm going to stop using it, no matter how good it is and everything else. I still need to figure out what's gone wrong there, what to do with that. But my iPads never fail me. And I have been digging around in the reading app, the Kindle app of my iPad. Same difference. And I've done a few of these videos where I dig around and look at the stuff that's sometimes years old on these devices. And you seem to like them. I've watched a couple of other booktubers do this kind of challenge. Another Bibliophile Reads did it. Sean the Book Maniac just did it. In both cases, those two videos, both the gentlemen involved ended the video by saying, if there are enough people who say they like this kind of content, I'll do it again. I hope you're not expecting me to start polling you people for whether or not you like my content. I think that ship has sailed. So I'm going to do another one of these, yet more lurkers, on my Kindle. I've got a bunch of them here that I want to show, but they're on the iPad. The first one is something that I read. I don't think I ever wrote a review of it, but it's there anyway. I must have got it from NetGalley. It's When Books Went to War. Who is this? Molly Guptill Manning. Fantastic popular history about the gigantic push to disseminate books to the armed forces during World War II. Which books, what it did for the reputation of those books, and also, refreshingly, a huge number of first-hand accounts of the people doing the reading. It's a tiny little footnote for World War II that is lost in the greater to and fro of the war, that it made a lot of readers. A lot of people, the people who were lucky enough to come back home, came back home with not just a morphine addiction and a tobacco addiction through the roof. The generation that came back from World War II was more addicted to tobacco than any generation until the present one, until the 21st century, where fully 100% of young people under the age of 24 vape all day long and think that it's healthy. I've heard them say, well, I don't smoke because that's unhealthy. Instead, I vape all the time. It's not like with cigarettes where I would go out for my drug addiction. I would stand there in a rat-infested alley for 20 minutes in a drizzle with slop all over my feet because I'm an outcast from society just to get my hit. Then I'd go back inside, fend off the awkward looks of all the people around me because I reek like an attar pit. And then I've bought myself maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes before the urge is on me to go out to that alley again. But that has a lot of to-do to it. You have to build up to it. You need equipment, and you need segregation, and you need the opprobrium of the people around you. Whereas vaping eliminates a lot of that and makes it possible for the addict to take their addiction pretty much nonstop. I know one young person who just sat for his MCATs and told me afterwards that he was really, really distracted because that test was the longest he's ever gone in his adult life without vaping. But in addition to that habit, to get back from my digression, this generation also came back, quite a few of them, with a taste for reading. And I love that. Absolutely love that. Now, let's see if we can get this to behave. No, it's not going to go that way. It's going to go this way. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is Sean David Hutchinson. This is We Are the Ants. This author won my heart with this book. And I've read everything this author's written now, and I've never read anything I didn't love. This is YA fiction about a young boy who has been frequently abducted by aliens. It's not a one-time thing. It doesn't traumatize him. It's part of his world. No one knows about it, and the aliens tell him that the world has a little more than 3 months left. That humans have a little more than 3 months left as a species on Earth, after which they will be wiped out. Unless the main character pushes a button. He's given literally a big red button that he can push to save humanity. And the key to the novel is he's not sure he wants to. He's not sure he wants to. His family life is rotten. His boyfriend died a year ago. Has left him just raw and open wound with grief. His friends aren't all that stellar. And he conducts, in the course of this novel, a broad-ranging pro and con study of whether or not, if you have the fate of humanity in your hands, what do you do? I found it fascinating just for personal reasons. Of course, I've said on this channel many, many times that all the dogs in the world, all the friends in the world, all the loved ones in the world, notwithstanding, if I were given that button, I would push it in an instant. I wouldn't hesitate for a fraction of a second to push that button, provided it only eliminated humans and not all life on Earth. If it just eliminated humans, I'd push it without hesitation. This boy hesitates, and the book broadens to become an inquiry into the worth of humankind. Which, if you've listened to me drone on this channel, you know I love T.H. White's book, The Book of Merlin, for exactly that reason. Because it also is a long rumination on whether or not mankind is salvageable, whether or not mankind is any good, if there's any systematic, long-standing good, especially any long-standing good that compensates for the bad. Terrific. The one drawback that I have for this author is that he is light on character building. His characters all sound the same. Oh, no. Okay, so I want to go towards me. Okay, this is Elora's Cave. You can see they're up on the top. Some of you who are reading gay fiction for a while will recognize Elora's Cave. This is Valiant One by J. Hughes, and as you can tell, it is a quasi-medieval gay love story. Only the love story is quasi-medieval. The cover is not. You can't get a body like that without a Soliflex, and you can't get a lower face like that without tobacco addiction. This is made by someone lifting weights in a scientifically balanced way. You don't get a body like that by being a blacksmith. And this is created by someone sucking on a paper straw 50 times a day as though their life depended on it. Not because their life literally does, but because it staves off withdrawal symptoms that are really awful. So, and you only get those two things in modern times. But the cover notwithstanding, I don't think I've ever read this. I mean, the boy has a stereotypical crown on. There's the stereotypical gilt around his cape to signal that he's a king. But I don't think. Oh wait, I don't want to lower it because that's giving in. I want to thumb towards me. Boop. There we go. Oh yes, look at that. An ebook of The Cruel Sea by Nicholas Montserrat. This is a thing I've shown you on this channel. I have a mass market paperback, a UK Penguin mass market paperback, and I also have this hardcover with this illustration. This is a novel by Nicholas Montserrat. I absolutely love Nicholas Montserrat. I wish I had all of him on ebook. But The Cruel Sea is his most revisitable book, and it was also his most profitable book by a wide margin. This thing made him bucket loads of money. It allowed him to buy a manor and become the lord of the manor as a putting on airs author. And it's the story of the Mary Rose. It's the story of a little British ship that works in convoy duty, is outfitted with the very earliest kind of sonar to detect torpedoes in the early years of World War II, and the ship's crew. It's a story of the ship's crew as well. And I know that sounds like, my granddad's fiction, etc., but it is fantastic on a human level. You don't have to care anything about ships in the sea type fiction. I know exactly the stereotypes you're thinking of when you think of ships in the sea type fiction. And I agree that a lot of those stereotypes are real. And I also agree that a lot of those stereotypes are boring. But not in this book. Oh my, no, not in this book. It's that hiding in plain sight type thing where you've got 100 of these at a yard sale, 100 of these old nautical books, 98 of which were only flushed out of the publisher's slush pile because this thing made $1 million. Keep in mind, there's something to be said for the original that started the mold. But you look at those 100 books, if you didn't know, you might pass right over this, and it reads unlike any of them. So don't be, the Nazi in Indiana Jones. He chose unwisely. Instead, choose the right book. The Cruel Sea is amazing. No matter what you think about He-Man adventure stories or war stories, you will love this novel. There are moments, there are scenes, there are character arcs throughout here that are so intensely human. So immediately identifiable, just amazing. I'm very glad I have an e-copy with a cover that I love. There we go. Okay, this is a Penguin classic of The Pillow Book of Sei Shonagon, a contemporary of the great Murasaki Shikibu, and where Murasaki Shikibu wrote a great journal and also one of the greatest novels ever written, The Tale of Genji. This author had something else on her mind. This is one of the silliest, dumbest, most trivial, and tritest books ever written. It is absolutely delightful. It is absolutely delightful. Where the author and some of her fellow ladies at court get together on the porch on a hot summer day and decide, well, one of us has to, read pen and some paper. Let's make a list of 10 things that are better when it's really hot. Or they see a cat coming in from the rain and think, what are 10 things that cats don't like? The only problem with the book is that it often shows the obliviously 1% nature of its author, because sometimes the thing will be, well, recently we were sitting on the porch and we saw a village man run by and his skin had been badly burned. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. What are some funny things we do when we're in pain? Things like that don't rub you quite the right way, but it is endlessly entertaining. And as usual, the Penguin Classic has a great introduction to introduce you to the whole world. Then what have we got here? Oh, yes. Okay, pardon for the bad U.S. cover, but this is My Name is Red by Orhan Pamuk, which almost feels like he wrote in response to me specifically. I had complained that this author has a tendency for the amorphous vapors in his writing, that his writing tends to just ooze all over the place, and he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, but he must have heard that or maybe felt it himself from other people, because this is an intensely plotted book. It's a historical fiction about a ruler who decides to have an illustrated book illustrated in a way that is forbidden by Islam, illustrated in the Western fashion. And one of the people connected with that book goes missing, so a big, wide thread of this book becomes an intricately plotted murder inquiry. But there's also cultural stuff and reflections on the art involved in either forbidden or non-forbidden artwork. Just a tremendous book. I think those of you who've been watching my channel for a while will think, well, okay, Orhan Pamuk, Steve probably likes him, but he probably loves My Name is Red. You're right. You're absolutely right. I am a predictable reader. This is an author trying to please his audience. So much of what this author writes, I get the impression that he's mainly wool gathering for himself, which can be interesting in an author this eloquent and this intelligent. But I mainly want my authors to remember that they have an audience and that they're dancing monkeys. And this is the only book in which he does. The Most Devilish Rogue. This is by Ashlyn McNamara. That is clearly, it must be some sort of sultry Regency romance. And it is clearly meant, that cover is clearly meant to fool me into thinking that that is a Paul Marin Tushy. But I know my Regency era Tushies backwards and forwards, you might say, and I am a connoisseur of Paul Marin covers. That is no Paul Marin Tushy, except no substitutes. But the book may be good. Even so. Oh, Alva March. This is Deliberately Bound. I don't know when I downloaded this. It must have been years ago. If I remember correctly, this is a story, it's a historical gay romance. Another one for the gays. I think it might even be Regency era. A historical romance about a nobleman who patronizes a certain bookstore. He likes his books well bound, and he likes his bookseller well bound. If I remember correctly, that's the plot. Maybe now that just merely noticing these things automatically brings them to the top of my Kindle. So I guess before the year is out, I should probably read this thing and see if that's what it's about. And if there's anything bookish, probably that's the furthest thing from the characters' minds. Oh, there we go. Okay, The Cropper's Cabin by Jim Thompson, the great Jim Thompson. I think I have a lot of Jim Thompson in the ebook, and I've read it all. And I strongly recommend him. You wouldn't think that I would because of how many diatribes I go on about Dude Bro Lit. But as Noah, you know, your archpriest of Dude Bro Lit, sure you all love him so much. As Noah will tell you, I don't have any objection to Dude Bro Lit if it's done well. If it avoids the 7 sins of Dude Bro Lit that I laid out in a very clear video. If it avoids those 7 sins, or even half those 7 sins, then I'm okay with Dude Bro Lit, provided it's extremely well done. The stumbling point I have is that Cormac McCarthy commits all 7 of those sins and is really bad at the same time. He has both things going against him. And he's the god of your idolatry when you love this sort of crap. Whereas Jim Thompson is brilliant. He is a brilliant novelist. Just yesterday I mentioned George Higgins. What could you call George Higgins if not Dude Bro Lit? And yet I love the man and I love the work. This is the same thing. This is Jim Thompson specializes in extremely brutal novels. This is a brutal, brutal fictional world. This one about a lot of his books center on volcanically angry young men who are their own worst enemies and lash out in all directions. And unlike in a lot of later books where the young men do that, in Jim Thompson novels, when the incredibly angry young man lashes out in all directions lash back. It just becomes a brutal mess from beginning to end. But oh, beautifully written. Just beautifully written. Just so that you know, I don't hate good Dude Bro Lit, obviously, since I have recommended much of it before. I hate bad Dude Bro Lit. Anyway, this is not my favorite Jim Thompson, but I found it lurking at the bottom of the Kindle. What is this thing called? Counterpoint, Song of the Fallen, Book 1 by Rachel Heimowitz. Rachel Heimowitz, good Lord. Does your bubbler know you write this kind of book? Oi. Obviously, as you can tell from the cover, this is a novel about what happens when Aragorn and Legolas finally give way to their inner passions. And they call it a mine. Let's just move on. Buried Alive. Okay, this is by Jack Quozo. And this is the startling untold story about Neanderthal Man. I have not read this. I read a lot about Neanderthals. I think it's fascinating to read about them and how much we can reconstitute about them. I always find it a little annoying when writers of various books about Neanderthals try to extrapolate on why we need to do any extrapolating, why we can't just ask them, and yet not come to the obvious conclusion that they were either bred out of existence by humans or wiped out of existence by modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens. Neanderthals were human too. They were just different species of human. We're so used to seeing the world that way. You think 7 species of hippo, 4 species of elephant, how many species of mice, how many species of bats, can't even count them, how many species of insects, how many species of humans, oh, there's only the one. Like that's, oh, so the one species that's in complete control of the planet is also the one species for which there are no other members. That must be a coincidence. But if I haven't read this. If I remember correctly, the author is an orthodontist who is not well respected in the paleology circles. So I don't know if he's studying Neanderthals from the jawbones that we have, or I have no idea. I have no idea. I will see how loopy it is. Okay, Brave Men Die, Part 1 by Dan Adams. I don't know the first thing about this. Must be years old. It's probably epic fantasy in the grimdark vein of Joe Abercrombie, and I cannot figure out why I have it. Was it a free deal for Amazon? Do I know the author, biblically or otherwise? I don't know. I don't know. But now that it's in prominence, now that it's at the top of the pile instead of the bottom of the Kindle, I'll give it a read and see what it is. Okay, there we go. All right, well, this is very heavily for the gays, then, one way or another. In some ways more than I suspect. This is, of course, A Boy's Own Story. This is Edmund White's famous breakout book. Autofiction, but before that, it got the stink on it that it has today. Because Edmund White can also write. He can also write actual fiction. The stink on autofiction in as 2021 comes to a close is that most of the people who write autofiction today, and are lauded for it with the Booker Prize and the National Book Award and whatever, call themselves novelists but cannot actually write fiction. They can't write anything that isn't one-to-one, explicitly, detail by detail, based on their own lives, on their own Twitter feed. Whereas, although this is intensely autobiographical and also very well done, Edmund White, I think, has lived longer than he had books in him, and he keeps writing, of course. But and his nonfiction, I dearly love. I could listen to him stem-wind forever and ever. His fiction, I think, gets a little bit more attenuated with every book, but he can do it, and it can be very enjoyable. Farewell Symphony is fantastic, but this is also lovely. This is now decades and decades old. Good to know that I have an ebook copy of it. Are we going to run out of books here? Yes, we are. We're going to run out of books. We're going to get to my boy. All right. Okay. So that was it. That was the roll call. Eric is not a book, so we don't have to dwell on him. That was the roll call of books on my Kindle. This time around, I don't know how many that was, but it was a fairly even mix of books that I know and have read and love, and I'm glad that I have them as ebooks. I'll try to disseminate them among many devices so that there's redundancy involved there, and also books that I didn't remember that I had that I want to try out and see. So I will give that a try. This coming 2 weeks we'll have a lot of experimental reading, non-work reading, rereading for me. So perfect timing for these sorts of spelunking expeditions into my Kindle. So there you go. There's another books lurking on the Kindle video, and I'm not going to finish up the video by saying that if you guys like this, if you vote and we have some sort of majority rule, then I'll do another one. I'll do another one if I please. And you'll watch. As long as you live in this house, you obey my rules. Thank you, BookTube.